This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome, everybody, to a great episode of Doc and Jock. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Joining me, my guy, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. We're going to talk about it. I think the Detroit Lions got a jolt of lightning with the decision that Dan Campbell made. I can't wait to break it all down. Luckily, what's good is that, you know, the media is always going to take a more calm approach. Adam and I, we don't mess around. We say, look, after game one, I asked Dan Campbell, hey, your offense don't look the same, bro. What's wrong? And luckily, Dan Campbell doesn't wait until disaster to make a change. Everybody knew you can't have 2-3 games where your team doesn't communicate. You can't have games where you have a Ferrari, you have Jahmyr Gibbs, Jamison Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and everybody does neat. You can't declare that Jamison Williams is going to have a breakout season and not know how to use them. So Dan Campbell made the move. We're going to break it all down. A great move, an invigorating move to me. I loved it. I thought it was a great pulse of the team decision, and one in which I know Dan is doing a lot of PR to save John Morton, but look, everybody knows it. Everybody knows what's going on. Everybody knows what happened. And it might not even be, you know, John Morton being all that bad, but because there's a trend in the NFL, and I asked Dan Campbell that, all the top offenses now have the head coach calling plays. And I get why. We're going to talk about it. A big win. Look, you can't take a lot out of curb stomping a shitty team like the Commanders, but at least you're able to do it. That's what good teams do. You curb stomp bad teams that quit. We're going to talk all about it and then preview the Eagles game. And then to end the podcast, just got to get Adam's sense of what's going on with the Red Wings. How the hell do we teach these guys that skate around the ice some special teams? PK power play, still an issue for that squad. And then we got to give love to the Pistons, man. They're balling. They're balling even when they play 3 games in 4 days. Some unknown guys are jacking up threes late, making plays. And to see Cade Cunningham dunk in the face of Andre Drummond was great. Because Dan Campbell made the move, a bold move, a strong move. And I think that, look, John Morton has declared publicly he's a film guy. He's a behind the scenes, stay in the lab all night, break down tendencies, break down when he thinks teams are going to be in zone versus man, how often they blitz, how often they do this, what kind of personnel do they use against this. That's what he is. He's a lab rat. I get it. And I love the fact that he owns what he loves. That's what he's grown up doing. That's what he's good at. He has a role. He's in the wrong role being an offensive coordinator, but in the end, it was recognized. He doesn't call plays well. Doesn't set up things. There's no flow. Amon-Ra dropped the hammer on the offense when he said, he told the media, we haven't had flow all season. Boom. It was declared. After the Vikings game, Dan Campbell took over play calling, and look what happened. Everybody's involved. The offense looks great. It looks easy. They're scoring points. They're just destroying the Commanders' defense. It was such a good thing to see. It was refreshing and to the point of, I know many people are going to just crap all over John Morton, but in the end, I would just take it from this perspective. Dan Campbell is an offensive guru who's learned under Sean Payton. There's nobody better after Ben Johnson left. This should have just been done. Like, you should have just set the tone early and say, I'm not going to experiment with a Super Bowl team. I'm calling the plays, and John, you just help me out. I think they made a misstep in how they portrayed John Morton. Now he looks like a guy that was in a wrong role, but that's fine. What was your reaction to Dan Campbell calling the plays? And I think he should own it. I think from now on, if you're Dan Campbell, the opinion of the doc is you call the plays. You know your offense. You know your personnel. You know the ins and outs. Have the help that's needed. Step into the Andy Reid role. You're 49 years old. You've learned everything about offensive football. You know it front and back. Call the plays from now until you retire from the NFL.
Yeah, I think what you have here is you've got a guy in Dan Campbell who knows what his offense is supposed to look like. When Ben Johnson was running it, it was fine. It was what he wanted to see. It was what he thought it should look like. When Anthony Lynn was running it, Obviously, there was a disconnect there. That's why he took it over. And then you've seen what happened that back half of that season. It was able to get righted. This offense hasn't felt right all year. Even through training camp, we were talking about how it feels a little bit stuck in the mud. And then you get into the regular season, and they had the game against Chicago, and that was cool. We've seen now, I'm assuming Dan Campbell probably called the majority of those plays. It hasn't felt right all year. So Dan Campbell puts the big boy pants on, and Dan Campbell makes a power move. And I think what you have here is you've got a guy who is totally comfortable being the CEO of this team. He says, this is my team. We're going to run it the way I want to run it. I'm going to see what I want to see. And Johnny Mo, you're not doing the job. This is something that we've talked about quite a bit, about him possibly not being in the right lane. He's not in the right role for this team. And Dan Campbell basically said the uncomfortable thing out loud on Sunday night or Sunday afternoon and was like, yeah, he's not in the right role for this team. He's not giving us what we need, and it's hurting us. And so Dan Campbell comes in, and it looks night and day. Like, the offense looked night and day. Now, I get it. It was a beat-up Washington team. But the offense had rhythm. The offense scored with efficiency. You look at the third down efficiency, they were operating at about 50%, whereas under John Morton, they were operating closer to 40%. That could be one or maybe two possessions, one or two maybe touchdowns in a game. That could be incredibly important when you're going up against a team like you're going to be going up against this week, when you're playing a team who is a defending Super Bowl champ, when you're playing a team who has aspirations of winning a Super Bowl. It's same as you have those same aspirations. Those extra converting on those extra third downs saves you from having to do it on fourth down and saves you from possibly turning the ball over. This offense looked awesome. Not just that, the offensive line specifically, and I think you had 6 or 7 different offensive line combinations in this game because guys were going down and guys were hurt. The offensive line looked comfortable. They looked like they were in position to do what they needed to do. They didn't look disjointed. And I don't know if it was a scheme thing. I don't know if it was just a rhythm thing. I don't know if there is just cohesion with what the plays are being called and what is happening with the offensive line and their assignments. I don't know what it was, but the offensive line looked dramatically different and looked dramatically more comfortable, which led to Jared Goff going out there being incredibly efficient. It allowed the run game to get going, and the run game looked efficient. I think everything about with Dan Campbell calling the plays, what you can say about the offense is it looks efficient and it looks comfortable. I think this is something that really needs to be put in that pro column check plus of Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell's not afraid to make a move. Dan Campbell's not afraid to put his ass in the hot seat. Dan Campbell's not afraid to take over and get things done the way he needs to get them done, the way he has a vision for this team operating. I think it was awesome to see. I think it's great that we have that in a head coach. A lot of people, especially nationally, think this guy is just a complete meathead. They go back to that opening press conference, which I absolutely loved, but they go back to that opening press conference and they think he's just a knuckle dragger. This guy's incredibly intelligent. He is super smart. He just put the entire league on notice this week, like, hey, I'm no dummy. I've got complete control over this offense. You think that was Ben Johnson's offense? No. I taught Ben Johnson. That is my offense. I run things. I think the bigger story coming out of Sunday is now, what does that do with John Morton? Because I think Dan Campbell, I think the players, I think everybody's saying the right thing about John Morton and what his role is with this team. But I don't know if he has a role with this team after this season. I don't know where he goes after this. I don't think he'll be fired this year unless he asks to step away. But I don't think he specifically has a role with this team going forward. You were brought in as the offensive coordinator. You failed at play calling. They basically gave you the keys to a Ferrari and you wrapped it around a pole. And Dan Campbell had to come pull it off the pole, bump out the fender real quick, adjust the engine, fix it all up, and then get the thing revving again. You have kind of pigeonholed yourself, and I don't think you get to stay with this team. And I think that creates something that we're going to have to talk about. I think that creates a bigger deal. Now, it could not be a deal. It could be possibly a big deal down the road. But I think you're going to have to make a decision at the end of the year. I think this can play out just fine for the rest of the season, but I think at the end of the year, a decision is going to have to be made on what John Morton's status is with this team. Where does John Morton go from here? And is this a big deal within the Lions? I know that they say it's not, but you know how that goes. They look one way and they say, no big deal here. And it's like, yeah, okay, we got to go deal with this on the back end in front, away from all of the media. Where does John Morton end up at the end of the year? And does this creep into other aspects of the team, and does it become a big deal later on?
Here's the thing. It's really interesting the way this story goes because everybody's trying to respect John Morton. Everybody's being really nice and not trying to say that he's in the wrong role. But, bro, it was clear. Like, if you don't know that you got to copy Ben Johnson's offense, I mean, you got some idiot podcaster asking Dan Campbell after a loss to the Packers, hey, is it feasible to just copy the great shit you were doing last year? And they were like, huh? Well, you don't have Frank Ragnow. You don't have some of the pieces. It's different. Look, it may not be exactly feasible, but Dan Campbell gives you the hope that it can look almost as good as what it showed last year. Here's the thing. John Morton has a role with the team, just not as OC. Here's the problem that's going to happen. There's going to be two names that are going to come available, most likely, Brian Daboll and Mike McDaniel, and maybe even the Bengals head coach if he gets blown out. Those are three guys from a great tree of offense. So it's going to be tough if Dan Campbell is taking the approach of, hey, I don't want to really call plays my whole career. I want to teach. Listen, nobody's going to trust John Morton in the history of Everdom. He doesn't portray himself well. He doesn't speak well. Like I said, he's a lab rat. He wants to sit in the film room, click a button, and relay information. John Morton deserves to be here. He has a wealth of knowledge. He should be, I don't know if it's going to be a downgrade or an upgrade. He should be the Lions' senior offensive assistant. He's the guy that does what he does and relay information. I don't want him in the box. I don't want him on the sideline. I just want him sitting at Allen Park, dialing up the film and saying, okay, Dan, the Packers like to run on 4th and 1 out of shotgun. It looks pretty stupid, but look, this is what they do. And they make bad choices, and that's all I need from John Morton. He deserves a role. I mean, the guy is praised by a lot of the top minds, Sean Payton, John Gruden. So he's a respected offensive mind. It's just, you're absolutely right. He's in the wrong role. He's not an offensive coordinator. That's not, that's part of the job, is to also, the offensive coordinator job is so vast. You got to delegate all these units. You got to work with all these people. And you also got to get the respect of the players. And once you lose Dan Campbell took the job on a Monday. By 3 days later, John Morton's blasting the players. So there's a little bit of a disconnect where you see Dan. Dan just called a game where the team scored 44 points, and he's up there in front of the media going, I got to get better. I'm going to get better. And so there's a different tact. And John Morton just doesn't have it. It's fine. It's not a big deal. He is a smart offensive mind. He deserves to stay here. But I also wouldn't mind if they just kept him in the OC role like what the Chiefs do with their offensive coordinator, where he's just a guy that does work, but we all know the mind is Andy Reid. So, in my opinion,
what did you make of? Before we go any further, what did you make of John Morton essentially throwing players underneath the bus? Yeah. Because to me,
it's craziness.
When I heard the quote and then I heard it, I was like, oh my God! Like that is something that we've not seen.
Right.
Underneath this regime. Normally when it becomes a situation with a coach and it becomes a situation with whatever it is on field, the coaches always say, yeah, it's on me. I got it. There's never any, we'll call it hot sauce. There's never any hot sauce. It's all very bland. It's all very vanilla. I got to be better. I got to put these guys in a better spot. I got to do a better job of this. It's all on me. It's all on me. This was not that. John Morton was very much like, it's on those guys. These guys have to go win their one-on-one battles. They're not doing their job. And then the players were asked about it, and the players were like, wait, hold up. What? It's probably more of a scheme thing that we've got going on here. Eventually pointing the finger back at John Morton. I thought that was nuts. And credit to Dan Campbell, because that is something that could tear a locker room apart.
For
That
sure.
is something that could really, really mess up the chemistry within the room and within the walls of Allen Park. And Dan Campbell essentially just squashed it. And it was one of those things that was, if you weren't paying attention, you probably missed it, and you didn't know it happened. And it could have been one of those things that really blew up and became a multi-week story. Instead, it was kind of a blip on the radar. It was
Right.
maybe a one-day story that
Right.
didn't get talked about. But I think internally, it kind of showed you John Morton definitely is not ready for that role and
No.
does not have those people skills, those
Right.
those skills to be able to handle ego and to be able to handle professional players. Like, that might work in college, but that ain't going to work here in the pros. And
Yeah.
again, you've got guys who are essentially green card guys, and then you've got John Morton, who seems like he's a bit of more of a red card guy. And I think Dan Campbell did a great job addressing that situation.
And the crazy part, cuz, is that we are in such a, we focus on the important words. John Morton did say, we all got to do a better job of putting things together. We're going to fix it. He did say it. But once he called out and said, because he used the word one or two players, like, he called it out so everybody would know who it was. It was the offensive line. It was either Graham Glasgow and Christian Mahogany or Graham Glasgow and Taylor Decker. So he called out the offensive line. So by using the phrase, it's just one or two players breaking down on every play, it's like, oh, no, you don't say that. Like, because, he sat there and probably watched the film and was like, oh my God, look at all this. All these plays are great. And you guys are making me look bad because one play is getting brought. Like, we know what happened. The offensive line against a good team like the Vikings, it was not a collectively great effort, but you can't say that. You can look how Dan Campbell does. I mean, you literally listen to Dan Campbell. If you listen to him, you would have known what to say, which is, collectively, man, that offense, we weren't good enough. Starts with me. I got to get the guys better. But by that point, cuz, he already had his job stripped. So he's like, fuck it, I'm just going to say it. So I actually respected it, because at that point, he already had his job lost. He was told on Monday, after the Vikings game, right away, Dan Campbell saw him and was like, oh, this is craziness. The players probably said, look, we watched the film. It's all disjointed. He sat up all night and said, oh, my God, this is terrible. We were unprepared. And clearly, when you had two guys shifting at the same time and then a player gets a holding call, it's all disjointed. So he stripped it pretty quickly. So John Morton probably at that point is like, I got less than one fuck to give. I'm just going to throw it out there. And a little bit of self-preservation mode. But listen, in the end, it's clear.
Wait, does that sound like the team guy that Dan Campbell was effusive of in his post-game?
But he was honest.
John Morton's a team guy. All he wants to do is win. He's all about win.
Meaning he's not going to say, he's not going to challenge Dan Campbell. He's going to do it. But in the end, it was the case. The offensive line was brutal against the Vikings. So sometimes, and listen too, remember, Kelvin Shepard did the same thing. But the problem is, John Morton doesn't have the same cred as Kelvin Shepard. So that's the disconnect, is that Kelvin probably already talked to Terrion and said, hey, I'm going to tell everybody that your run game play is not good because look what's going on. For John Morton, look, he has a role. Jared Goff likes him. Clearly, he's not the best at establishing the run game. Like I said, he might not be the best people person. It might not be the best with the media. But this is exactly, and I want to get your sense, because the Lions tried to avoid that kind of talk, but I think Dan Campbell made a mistake in putting him in. This is an Anthony Lynn situation all over again, because it becomes a big deal. Play calling is huge. Who calls plays is important because it sets up a lot of things. And I know that everyone's like, it's a collaborative approach and everybody helps. Yeah, no doubt. Everybody's going to help out. But Dan Campbell needs to take the accountability, because in the end, if you want to just say who puts the team in the best position to win, who calls the plays the best, it's going to be Dan Campbell. It's going to be Dan Campbell. He taught Ben Johnson. He knows this offense. He knows the ins and outs of the players. He just has to call plays. I don't care if you get a Brian Daboll. Dan Campbell has to be involved deeply in this offense to a high degree, in maybe even play calling. And that's why maybe you still stick with John Morton doing what he does, but just sits there and does nothing in regards to play calling. But here's the problem. It's kind of clear that the Lions favor former players that have an innovative mind, that are a little bit more in their age range. They went to two guys over 50. It didn't work. Ben Johnson was an offensive genius, but Ben Johnson's like Matt Patricia, because at training camp, Ben Johnson would light into the players if they were forming. Like, he lit up into a rookie as loud as can be, and Ben Johnson is not a nice dude. But at the same token, there was a relatability because he was the bad cop and Dan Campbell was the good cop. John Morton is just a little bit different in that he doesn't have the experience in calling plays and doing the things that you need to do. So I don't think it's a philosophical difference. I just think that there is a way to get all these mouths fed. And for you to say publicly, you're a victim of your own, you got to lie in the bed you made. He said Jameson Williams is going to have a breakout year, and then you're targeting him twice. Like, it's not that hard to get him involved in a passing game, just like Dan Campbell did. Like, you get him over the middle, some intermediate routes, you get him involved with the handoff. It's not that difficult to get your star players involved. Or against the Vikings, hey, you see Sam Laporta running free, going crazy, and then you go away from him. It's like you gotta kind of some experience type stuff that John Morton just doesn't have on a day-to-day basis. So there's no chance in hell. You listen to Dan Campbell and all the words he was using. There's no chance, right, they go back to John Morton to call plays, right? Like, I know Dan's like, well, I want to teach him and I want to see and all that stuff. Listen, the fan base is not going to like it. They're going to be, it's just, unfortunately, it's one of those circumstances where the Lions could be up 14-0. They go 3 and out at Ford Field. The crowd's going to boo and complain about John Morton. It's just the way it is. Dan Campbell should publicly own this offense, should call plays the rest of the year, and then you figure it out. Because I still think this offense, with new leadership and Dan Campbell calling plays, I think they can drop 30 points a game pretty easily, and they'll have opportunities to be successful. It just was a mismatched opportunity here that John Morton got, but I think he's got a role. But I am concerned that Dan Campbell now is 0 for 2, 2 for 3, missing on offensive coordinators. You tab Ben Johnson, you taught him, but Ben Johnson brought a lot to the table. Clearly, he's head coach material. He's elevatable. I think John Morton is more of a behind-the-scenes guy, but it is concerning that Dan Campbell, I think, is trying to teach people stuff that in the end might be, you just showcase with Ben Johnson. The ceiling has been set. Elite offensive play that can score a lot of points, world class. We're not talking about just regular season stuff. We're talking about all-time best offensive type stuff. So John Morton had an unbelievable, he had to try and meet some standards that were pretty high that he simply could not meet. But Dan Campbell can easily meet it. So there's no way they go back to John Morton, right?
I don't think there's any way you can go back to John Morton, especially not after having that little dust up in the media where you kind of threw some players underneath the bus. Like I said, kudos to Dan Campbell for putting it out and it not becoming a multi-day story and not becoming something that hung over this team. It literally was a blip on the radar, and if you missed it, you probably missed it, and you're learning about it right now. I don't think there's any way. I don't think the players will allow it. You've seen how efficient this team was, and you've seen the way that this team was able to play. It literally felt like when you have a head coach who gets fired, and they bring in the new head coach and you get that head coach bump, it's what it felt like. It felt like this team, like the shackles were taken off of this team and they could go and they could be free and they could do what they had to do. I don't think you could go back to John Morton no matter what Dan Campbell wants to do. I think there would be a mutiny in that locker room. I think Jared Goff would stand up and pull Dan Campbell off to the side and say something. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown would do the same. I think you would have David Montgomery do the same. I think Penei Sewell would do the same. You have to realize this offense, it just clicked. It just looked so good on Sunday. The offensive line looked comfortable, something that they haven't looked all season long. The best part about it is, like I said, you were playing with multiple offensive line combinations. Penei Sewell went down for almost the whole drive. You had different guys rotating in at guard positions because guys were banged up. You had different guys rotating in at tackle positions because guys were banged up. You got to see essentially a whole view of what they kind of do in practice in the middle of a real game, because guys were getting nicked up and guys had to get work done in the middle of games. And those guys didn't skip a beat. And that has been the Achilles heel all season, is that offensive line. That offensive line hasn't been good, and that offensive line hasn't been right all year long. Jared Goff is on pace to get hit more this season than he ever has in any season in his career. The run game has not looked great at all. The most efficient the run game has looked is when they do these outside sweep plays to Jahmyr Gibbs, and that is solely based on his talent to get the edge and then his speed to get downfield while having guys who are engaged in blocking like an Amon-Ra St. Brown or Jameson Williams getting downfield and throwing those extra blocks. That's the only reason. That is basically guys doing their job and winning those one-on-one battles. That is what that is. That run game has had no flow trying to run the ball up the middle. That's why you haven't seen David Montgomery in most of these games, because they don't have the ability to hit the hole or create a gash or just open anything up to run it through the middle. And you're going to need that when the playoffs roll around. That right there correlates to that third down efficiency. You've got to be able to pick up those 3rd and 2s, and sometimes you got to be able to hand the ball off to David Montgomery and say, go get us some, big boy, and he's going to fall forward for 3 or 4 yards. Or he'll fall forward for 3 or 4 yards, bounce off a guy, and go pick up 2 more, because that's how he runs. You haven't been able to see that all year. I don't think you can go back to John Morton at any point at all this season. And I think if you're thinking about doing it for next season, you should probably think again. I think you said it perfectly. John Morton's role with this team, if he's going to remain with this team, is this guy needs and has to stay in the background, has to stay in the lab, has to work on designing different play calls, looking at defensive tendencies, and helping out where Dan Campbell asks him to help out.
Right.
He is not the offensive coordinator, nor should he ever be the offensive coordinator of this team.
Nope.
It just can't happen.
Yep, and now you move forward. You got some momentum, 6-3. You're tied with the Bears because the Bears are doing their thing. They figured out how to win, and Ben Johnson's a guru when he's got his people playing, and so it's going to be tight. Luckily, the Vikings don't have a quarterback, so that's good, and the Packers, look, they were a good team as constructed, but when they deal with injuries, no Spartan dog Jaden Reed, they lost their best offensive weapon. They're down, and I think they're going to be out for their season goals. I think took a big dip with their last back-to-back losses. So you got to still battle in the division, but I think it got a little bit easier. So you now are in the heavyweight fight. It's the Eagles. You got to play well. Now, the Monday night game was terrible, and I couldn't believe it that the 2 games I got to enjoy, I got to tape and say, okay, I'm going to sit back and watch some football. It's the Chargers and the Steelers. That shit put me to sleep. And then you get a game in which it's good defense, but I couldn't stick with that, man. I couldn't stick with the Chargers and the Eagles. I couldn't stick with the Eagles against the Packers, man. It was just brutal. It was just like, oh my God, there's no offense. Like, these guys keep stalling out. It's boring as all hell. There's so much more interesting stuff to watch. So I was like, I got to click out of this. I'll just keep monitoring the score. I think because if the Lions get rolling offensively, I don't know if the way, unfortunately for the Eagles, that Lane Johnson injury might be something to pay attention to. I'm a little bit excited about the opportunity the Lions have. It might not be as competitive as people think. I think the Lions, if they get rolling, if they get charged up, I think the Lions can get rolling and score 30 points. Now, the problem is going to be, is it one of those deals where your defense struggles because the Eagles now know, shoot, man, we couldn't run the ball. We couldn't do nothing. We target A.J. Brown less than 5 times. That can't be right. So they're going to be a little bit, I think the Eagles are going to focus a little bit better. So it's going to be a great game. It's going to be, for me, another barometer of how close the Lions are to being a Super Bowl caliber team. You may have to, because in a couple weeks, come back when the playoffs are taking place. This might be an NFC Championship preview. It might be in Detroit. It might be in Philly. So I want to see how the Lions handle the pressure, how the offensive line with Coyote Awosika, how they continue rolling, and I want to see the stars be stars. J-Mo, St. Brown, and Jahmyr Gibbs got to carry this football team. If they do, my goodness, because I think that many people feel like it's going to be closer. I feel like with some momentum, I don't know if the Eagles' offense can keep up with the Detroit Lions. Are you seeing it the same way? What are you seeing about this game?
I think there's something wrong in the mix with Philly.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. The maybe it's just overuse on Saquon. Maybe they did too much with him last year. You've seen it with guys like Sean Alexander, where they'll have that, was it like a 200 carry season, and they come back the next year and they're a shell of what they were. Saquon doesn't look right. That offense doesn't look right. A.J. Brown seems like he's a malcontent, but when that team is firing on all cylinders, he's seeing the ball. So like it's one of those things. Like, what do you do? Do you reward the guy for his bad attitude? I don't know how you handle that, right? Defensively, I think that team can cause some problems for the Lions. They're really big up front, so it's going to take that offensive line, like we talked about, hasn't really been good all year. We had this game against Washington. It really felt like it was kind of a trial run to see what could work when they get to this game. So I think they're going to have to carry some of that over. I think the one thing that we talked about a lot last week was the quick passing game, right? The short dropbacks, getting the ball out, getting guys in motion. Really working on some of that deception with the play call and moving guys around a little bit, getting the defense to kind of show their hand and getting the ball out quickly to where it needs to go. That worked well against Washington. I think that can serve you well here against Philadelphia because they're meaty up front. They got some big guys up front. They can get to the quarterback. They don't have a problem getting to the quarterback. I think your skilled players are better than their secondary, but they have a very good secondary. Like, I'm not trying to take anything away from those guys. They have a very good secondary. I think this game is going to be incredibly close, and I think this will be a bit of a preview into what we see for the NFC Championship game. These are two teams who I feel like the Lions are destined to get to that point where they can play for a Super Bowl. And I feel like Philly does all the things that you want your general manager to do and making moves to put you in position to be that team that's the number one dog in your conference. And they're good every single year. Every single year. Like, I have zero faith in Nick Sirianni. I think he's a boob. But, like, he does a decent enough job with what he's got. And the talent there, it's almost like it's coach-proof. You know what I'm saying? So I think this is going to be a really good game. I think this is a game that if you are a Lions fan, you're obviously going to be dialed in, but you need to pay close attention. You need to watch the matchups up front with the Detroit Lions offensive line and Philly's D line. I think defensively, you're going to have to watch the trenches as well. The tush push is going to be a thing that will be utilized. Dan Campbell recently did an interview, and he talked about having enough guys up front where they feel like they're okay.
Yeah.
He referred to those guys as stumps. So, Aleem McNeil, DJ Reader, those guys are going to have to fill that gap in the middle, and then everybody else is going to have to help support those guys.
Right.
So
the best defense against the tush push is don't let them get into it. That's basically
it. Correct. You got to fire off the ball quickly, punch those guys in the mouth. I think this is going to be a real test for Aiden Hutchinson, though. Like, when you watch this game, you watch how Aiden plays. Aiden likes to run around like his hair is on fire. He likes to get around that edge. He likes to get at the quarterback. It might just be best for you to work on contain this week with him. Because if he misses, if he gets there, cool, you got a sack. But if he misses, there's a lot of room for Hurts to run.
Hurts can run, yep.
And there's a lot of room for him to do something crazy, like with maybe an RPO or do something where he gets out on the edge and he just kind of tosses the ball back to Saquon, get Saquon moving downhill. So contain is going to be important. But I think both sides of the ball for the Lions is going to be important. What that offensive line does and what that defensive line does to help contain Jalen Hurts, and offensively, are they able to protect Goff and allow that offense to get that rhythm and get moving? I'm looking forward to this game. I think this game is one of those games that when we went through the schedule, we circled this. We highlighted this when I'm like, all right, cool. And the best part was it was later in the year, so they could kind of figure some things out and work on a couple of things and get all the bugs worked out. Hopefully the moving John Morton off of play calling helps maybe open some things up and maybe is kind of the thing that refines this offense and gets it back to where we expect it to be. It's nuts when you hang 44 points on a team. Like, that's a lot.
It's a lot.
Like, you doubled them up. Now, again, it's not a good Washington team, but are you able to get into this game against the Eagles? Can you shut that offense down and hang 28 on them? I feel like this game against the Eagles is going to be a race to 30.
Yep.
If whoever get the 31st wins this game.
Yep. Same. Race to 28. I think the Lions get there first. It's going to be like 30-24, 27-23. It's going to be, I think, a game in which Gibbs and I think it's going to be maybe even lower scoring because both teams maybe are going to run the ball a little bit and they'll be efficient passing the ball. So the game might have some flow. So we'll see what happens. We'll see if the officials make themselves known, and we'll see if the Lions are able to go out on the road. I feel like it's an offensive game for the Lions. If they score, if they're efficient and Dan Campbell calls the right plays, let's go. You kicked off the momentum. You're laser focused. This is a focused team. I think J-Mo gets in the mix. Primetime game, Amon-Ra. It's good. I feel like they're going to put themselves in the best position possible. You also got to just have your defense step up a little bit and make sure that Devonta Smith is not the guy that just wreaks havoc in your secondary and torches everybody. Terrion Arnold, Kirby Joseph, we got to watch out throughout the course of the week. Let's see if Terrion Arnold comes back, because that will be a little bit of a damaging loss if the concussion protocol prevents Terrion from playing. And Kirby Joseph, we'll see if he gets back to practice and gets back on the back end. But yeah, it's exciting. Heavyweight matchup, Super Bowl NFC preview. It's going to be great to see, and hopefully the Lions do execute and put aside some of their issues, play well. And that's the good thing, is that if the Lions do play well, it'll be quite competitive. And I do think that they're going to have the attention, because if they know that if they don't play good against the Eagles, they'll be taken to the woodshed. Now, moving forward here, a couple quick thoughts on the two teams here that are playing currently as well alongside the Lions. Because what's going on with the Red Wings special teams, it's cost them games. Clearly, you can't have it where your opponent gets all the penalty shots, has all the opportunities to cash in on penalties with the man advantage. Then you get opportunities. You go 0 for 5, 0 for 6, and you're like, what the hell? You can't go 1 for 5 on the power play. And your penalty kill has to be so much better. You're leaving your goalie out to dry. You're leaving some points on the board. They got a stretch there here in the last week. They've lost 4 of 5. And you're giving back some of the goodwill that you've had. Just like, man, it's a hot and cold team. And Dylan Larkin did stand up in front of the media and say, hey, I got to do better. I got to bury some chances. Yeah, it was pretty crazy, man. There was some game in which he was sitting there right at the front of the net, and he's putting the puck right in the pads of the goalie. He's got to bury. But then I think the coach was like, that's really nice of him to do, but we got to look at our scorers too. Like, we can't just have great opportunities and not bury the chances. So special teams is it with the Red Wings right now. Do they fix it?
I don't know what's going on with them. Like, I just don't understand.
Special teams, baby.
No, I get it, but like, I don't understand why there can't be that carryover. I don't know what's gone wrong with that mix. You know what I'm saying? And look, when it comes to penalty kills, it really is just being in position and working hard. It is bodying along the boards. It's doing the dirty work. It's laying down in front of shots. When it comes to offense, though, it's really and truly, you just got to sometimes simplify it, right? Make it a little bit easier. Don't try to overcomplicate things. It really is get the puck up to the points, circle and rotate. And what that does is that helps create lanes and open. It gets that defense moving around and shifting. And once they move around and shift, usually there's a soft spot in the zone, and you get that to your better skilled players who have the ability to put the puck in the back of the net. I'm not sure what's got lost in translation here. You've got a head coach who's a pretty good head coach, right? He's pretty motivational to these guys. When things aren't going right, he's got no problem stepping in and basically taking a steel chair to their back and getting them to start firing on all cylinders. I don't know what's going on, though. I don't know why there's this breakdown and they can't score goals when they're on the power play. And I just don't understand why the special teams units are a leaky sieve on this ship. And then this team shows moments where they don't even deserve to be on the ice. Like, they're just embarrassing. I think this is what's going to continue for most of the season, though. I think they're going to be this type of team where they get hot and they're streaky and they win a couple of games, and then they look like absolute ass and they lose a couple of games. And you can point to different things, whether it's the power play, or whether it's the penalty kill, or whether it's the goaltending, or whether it's the defense, or whether it's the offense not being able to generate shots and get scoring opportunities. I don't feel like this mix of this team is right. And I think it's incumbent on Todd McClellan to have this team in a position to be in the playoffs and force Steve Yzerman's hand to be a buyer, to go get that piece that puts them over the top and helps solidify whatever the leaks are in the boat, whatever they have to do to address some of these problems.
Yep.
Because to me, it's just too inconsistent, right? Like, you can go out and you can lose a game. That's fine. Okay. But it's how you lose. When you get walked off the ice 5-1, That's not good. You know, if you go out there, you lose the game in overtime 3-2. Okay, cool. You fought hard, just puck didn't go your way. Puck luck, we'll call it. You know what I'm saying? Or maybe there's a breakdown here, a breakdown there. Stuff that you can address. When you're losing 5-1, man, I don't know if there's one thing that you can point at and say that's the problem.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's usually multitudes of things, and it's not just special teams in this case. It's not just your power play or your PK unit. There's something else in the mix that just isn't right, and that I think is going to be the conversation throughout the year until we get to the trade deadline and we can kind of see what this team's going to actually be. And like I said, I feel like it's incumbent on the players and it's incumbent on McClellan to get this team in a position where they're vying for a playoff, where they're vying for the playoffs, not even for a playoff spot. They're in the playoffs. It's all about seeding, and they're working towards that, and they're forcing Steve Yzerman's hand to go make a freaking move and get somebody else in here to help steady this ship.
Talk about steady ship. JB Bickerstaff got his boys playing. They're number one in the East. You got to see, which was amazing because Andre Drummond was a guy that toward his end of his run in Detroit just became a guy that became a player that the fans did not like anymore. And to see Cade Cunningham dunk in his face to get a W over the 76ers on the road was great. Then they come back and have a gritty performance at home where six of their regulars are not playing. No Tobias Harris, and you realize, oh my goodness, and you get guys that are just coming in and making key plays, and you win. And it's just a good thing to see this at the energy level. Now the crowd was a little bit light at LCA on a Monday, but hey, it's all good, man. This team has got the attention, and what we've wanted to see is Cade Cunningham has stepped up, and when he balls out, you're getting the Mr. Cade kind of treatment, man. One name, Cade, and he's playing amazing. It's good to see, and they deserve attention. They deserve the fact that they're winning a lot of games, and that they're a team that's gritty. They're able to bounce back. They value, the cup, and I know it's an in-season tournament. They want to win it. They went out to Brooklyn, had a good game, and so they're catching attention. And this is great to see, where you build a core, young talent, you get in the right pieces, and I do think, look, in the end, the Monty Williams era is going to go down as a big colossal waste, but it was so bad. I mean, literally, you opened up the warts, and it was basically like you ran a slum, and nobody knew about it. But then Channel 7 comes in and is like, you guys are running a slum. And then the Arab owner comes out and is like, what are you talking about? There's no slum. And then they go, we're going to open the door here, and our cameras are going to go inside, and there's dilapidated doors. There's no concrete here. The toilet has black shit on it. Bro, what are you talking about? So when you got Monty Williams, you get a 30-game losing streak, and the whole world is laughing at you. And it wasn't bad. The word bad was not even, you can't even use it. It was atrocious. It was basically catastrophe, blowing it up. When you get a 30-game losing streak, 30-game losing streak, you set an NBA record. We were laughing every week about, well, they lost again, and next topic. And so you got it to the point where it was exposed. You hit beyond rock bottom. And that's what it took to open Tom Gore's eyes. Like, oh my God, we were awful. He scratched a check for millions for a dude to leave, and he fixed it. So for as much blame as he gets, man, credit to you to realize I got to scratch a check for over $50 million to give a guy to go away to fix this problem. And now he's getting the fruits of the labor where you added talent. Oh man, it was really difficult. I mean, what was so crazy was the patience that so many fans gave Troy Weaver. Me and you were sitting here going, bro, are they going to just keep drafting centers? Are they just going to keep, like, Troy Weaver was like the Salvation Army, or he was like somebody that just wanted to give out projects? Like, he was like Wiseman and all these guys that were projects that other teams didn't want. And Troy Weaver was like, yeah, I'm going to go this. Like, dude, this is not 1997. This is 2022. You got to field a team that can shoot threes. And the first thing that the Trajan Langdon figured out was, hey, let me go find a guy like me. Let me find a Malik Beasley. Now, they didn't do the great psychological profile, but hey, no, listen, we'll give him a pass for that. But at least they found a guy to fit the mold of the biggest weakness of the team, was shooting threes. And now they had to let him go because of off the court matters and stuff happened. But at least they're trying to get guys that fundamentally can play the game the way it's supposed to be, inside and out. And when they are shooting well, when you get young guy in Duran developing, and you're doing it without Ivy, it's a team to watch. You got to watch them. There's a lot of good things to talk about with the Pistons. It's fun to watch. Are they on your radar?
Oh, absolutely they are.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
I was driving home on Monday night, and I was listening to the end of that basketball game, and it was gripping, man. It was absolutely crazy. But I think what you're getting and what you're seeing here, you kind of compare that and contrast that to the Detroit Red Wings. You're getting a team that has a we'll call him a budding superstar, right? I don't know if Cade Cunningham ever becomes a superstar, but he is a star in this league.
A baller.
This is a guy who had basically a whole season of growth where he wasn't detoured by injury. Gets to come back in with a coach who gets it, right, and gets to put him in position to where he can make plays. And then he's got pieces around him that help support him. And he's able to help take over ball games. And he knows what's expected of him, and he knows what the expectations are. And he's able to go ahead and he's able to fulfill those. I think you've got a team here who is going to be incredibly dangerous. And we talked about this in the offseason, right? We talked about this at the end of their season last year, that this is a team that could really make some noise this year because of the landscape of what the East looks like with all of the injuries. This is a team that should be pushing for one of those top 2 spots in the East. And this is a team that should be pushing to have home court advantage in the playoffs. And the expectations aren't just to get to the playoffs. It's to win in the playoffs. And I've been amazed at what this team has been able to do. We're recording this now, and they've just completed a 7-game win streak, and they've gone on the road and they've had a game back to back, and they're able to win these games. Those are getaway games. Those games are like built in as losses, and they were able to win those games. And look, yeah, they had to go to overtime the other night to get a victory, but it was incredible to watch, and it was fun to listen to see them pull together to do it. And yes, Pistons are definitely on my radar, and I think they're going to be very, very dangerous this season.
Yes, I think they're going to win a playoff series. I think we can say it. We can say it now. The Detroit Pistons are going to have an opportunity to get to the postseason, not just appear. That series against the Knicks should give them confidence. Like, wait a minute, if we play Detroit basketball, maybe there's opportunities to win games in the postseason. So let's see. Let's see what happens. It's going to be a fun ride, and we'll definitely stay tuned to the Wings and the Pistons, and of course the Lions. We'll recap next week on the next episode of Doc and Jock. Make sure you follow Adam on X at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. Thanks for your quality engagement, your reactions to all the stuff that we put out there. It's a fun ride, and each and every week putting out podcasts has been amazing. It's the best form of medium of sports that you can do. You can just sit back, enjoy the audio content wherever you enjoy it. Just type in Detroit Sports Podcast, and our content will find you. Hit that subscribe button. Let us know what you think. Feel free to interact. Tag at Detroit Podcast, and let's go. Let's have conversations about sports. If you've heard anything that you've just absolutely disagree with, if you think that John Morton might still have a chance to be here, if you're not as confident about the Red Wings or Pistons, let us know. We'll definitely enjoy the debate and conversation, because I can't wait to talk to you next week. It's a fun time now in Detroit sports. It's now taking that next step from, okay, being a winner to, can these teams take the ultimate step? Can they take steps deeper? NFC championships, NBA finals. Can they get there? Can they win? It's going to be a fun ride. And with the Red Wings, it's about, hey, can you figure out some of the finer tuned details to be able to get back to the winning ways? I'm the Doc, and for Adam the Jock Strozinski, this has been Doc and Jock. You've been listening to the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
You fucking podcasters. I said don't let them in here.